Welcome back, Warriors.
Yay!
Celebrate 100 episodes. Come on.
Do. We made 100.
Woohoo! Do. Woohoo! 100 freaking episodes, lady.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
No.
I can't believe it. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm thrilled. I feel like I'm proud of us. I'm excited that we've hit this incredible milestone.
Mm-hmm. And we never put the pressure on ourselves to do it. We weren't like, we need to do 100 episodes, or like by our 100th episode, we need X. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's been like a joy, and we're at 100. Like, do you remember when TV shows would do their 100th episode and it was always like some
a huge
big
freaking party?
Yeah.
They'd have a cake the size of like the table.
We didn't plan correctly.
No.
No,
I mean,
we should have.
and it wouldn't be cake, not for me. But yeah. I feel like we both need a dessert right now. We should hit pause on this
cookies and celebrating.
Maybe we need to hit
cookies
pause on
and
this recording
gummies
and go get something. I like gummies too. I like everything but cake. That's the only dessert I don't like.
Yeah.
But maybe, all right. Well, what we'll do is when the episode comes out, you and I will have a little toast of some kind of sweet treat for ourselves.
Yes.
Maybe a little champagne or something to toast this fun and important milestone. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the lack of pressure that we put on ourselves, because you and I are very, very good at putting the pressure on ourselves about so many things in our lives. We are really good at shoulding all over ourselves about work, about just any situation. And just having, a perfectionist mindset all the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like we really have been so great to each other or for each other about being really go with the flow since day one. Like, who are we? I'm so confused by us. I think it's podcasting that's made us like this.
And I think like for this has always been like a passion project. We haven't felt like we've needed to make money from this, because I think that if we started to try to make money or get sponsors or like whatever, all the thing, repurpose our content, right? Like all that stuff would then start to be extremely stressful. And there would be a lot more like challenges we would have to problem solve and stuff. And so I think because this is just, it's like a hobby for us. It's been a lot more joyful.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I think.
It's so much more fun. Like all the things you just said were like, I immediately was like, no, like my body was kind of like, nope, you don't like those things. Like, okay, sure. And in some respects, you're like, oh, it'd be cool to be like acknowledged and get all the things and sponsors and paid. But then with that comes pressure, right? Because then it's a job, then it's work.
Yeah.
And so the way that you show up has to be different, right? Or even if you're still you and you're authentic and, being yourself and hopefully showing up in integrity, but there's still the pressure of like, okay, well, now we need to make sure that we keep these sponsors. We need to make sure that we're saying all the things. Then the perfectionist mindset, I feel like, would come back so hard for both of us, right?
Yep. I'd have to be smarter.
Right.
Yeah.
We'd have to plan our topic ideas with like so much more time and effort.
Yeah, exactly.
And always like stick to the script kind of thing, I mean, I feel like we're uniquely able to always just speak freely in the moment, obviously with thought and consideration. We're not just like jumping on here all the time and just being like, let's just shoot the shit about anything and everything.
Yeah.
It's like there's not no intentionality behind the things that we're doing here, especially when we're talking to our warrior guests and, connecting with our community on Instagram and things like that and via email. But at the same time, it's all from a place of passion and love, like you said.
Yeah.
It just feels freeing and it's rewarding to hear from the people that do listen, the people that tune in all the time, that reach out on YouTube or Instagram or via email or whatever to say like, this episode really landed for me, or I loved that conversation, made me laugh really hard, or here's a story that was similar. I couldn't wait to tell you guys this after I heard that one episode. And it just, that stuff really feels so fulfilling.
Yeah.
And makes me feel like, at the end of the day, no matter what we're doing this big thing for ourselves, and we don't have to diminish it because it's not like a job. Right.
Right.
In the way that, Like there's no like exchange in that way.
Yeah.
And so we can still impart love and light and wisdom and our thoughts and feelings and experiences, right? And of course, our guests have done that for us like tenfold for our community of listeners. And we are just continuously in awe and grateful to all of them and everyone that will be our guests in the future. And I'm just proud of us.
Yeah.
I'm proud of us in many ways for all the things.
We did it. We didn't even have a plan to do it, but we did it.
We didn't have a plan, but we
didn't have a plan to not do it, but we weren't like, hey,
we need 100.
We need 100. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's just been come what may since day one. And I love that for us because our anxiety often and our overthinking minds and our control enthusiast minds often is what leads the way for you and I both. And maybe for some of you listening. And so to have this joy-filled experience over the past 100 episodes be because it was a joy-filled experience and for nothing more feels really awesome because it feels like we just allowed ourselves to show up, which we did, right? We showed up for each other and for our listeners and for our guests, and they showed up for us. And we can look at that as it just one giant ass win in of itself, because not everything we do has to be about an end product or something, some kind of perfect wrapped up with a bow thing. It could just be about taking a ride and a journey, and we didn't know how long it was going to be. We don't know how long it's going to be. Right. We could be, this is it, guys. This is our last episode. Yeah. Just kidding. Just kidding. No. Right. But the truth is that we don't know how long we're going to be a podcast. Right. We have no idea. And that's kind of awesome because I feel like we can sometimes, and maybe I'll speak for me. I can sometimes think really hard about how things should be and what the end product should be and how it should sound and feel and be and what it should mean to people. And just having the ability to let all of those expectations go for myself feels so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. You can speak for both of us.
Boom. Did it. Nailed it. All right. So we thought it'd be fun if we did some mailbag for our 100th episode celebration today. So we put it out there to our IG community to share any questions they had for us about our personal experiences with anxiety that maybe we've covered on the show before, and maybe some of it we haven't. And we got so many amazing questions. Like crazy how many questions we got. And so we're definitely going to be sprinkling in other mailbag episodes as we go on. And so for today, for the purpose of time and, being consistent with how much we're sharing. And so that way, y'all, if you're taking some notes or reflecting, right, or whatever it is you're doing, or if you're just enjoying in the moment listening, you can kind of take some time with these handful of questions we're going to offer today, our responses to. And then maybe we'll tackle more of them in the future. And I want to reiterate that we are offering responses, not answers. Yes. Because we don't have the answers.
Yes. I already have light anxiety about some of, I don't know the order of the questions. Like you and I talked about which questions we're going to answer this time and stuff. But some of them I was like, I'm not an expert. I just live with it, So, these are reflections, our own thoughts. Take it with whatever you take it with.
Right. You asked us. And so these are our thoughts and responses and opinions and things that have worked well or haven't worked well for us. And so these are not to be taken as some kind of gospel or some kind of thing that you need to adopt for yourself or for your own truth. And so, we've said it a million times, but we're not doctors. We're not experts. We're just two gals who have anxiety.
Podcasting.
That's right. Oh, that's a good name for a podcast.
Yeah. All right, we'll start a second one.
Speaking of pressure, that one's just going to be you and I doing bullshit rants about nothing.
For 15 minutes. It'll be at the end of every time we record this, then we'll end it with two gals podcasting and we'll just rant for 15 minutes and call it quits.
It's just the conversations that we always have after we hit stop on our recordings anyway. Yeah. We should just keep recording those, pretend like it's not still recording, and then put that out as a second podcast. That's not the worst idea.
Let us know if you all want to listen to two gals podcasting.
Oh God. You know what? Don't worry. I don't want to know your thoughts on that. Okay. All right. So question number one.
Oh, I'm anxious. Okay.
Oh, do you need a pause?
No.
Should we take a deep breath together? Okay. You're okay.
All right.
Here we go. Big breath. Okay.
Okay.
How do you help your partner when they are experiencing anxiety, when you notice it, right? So when you notice your partner experiencing anxiety, or your spouse, or someone in your life that's super important to you, maybe, how do you go about handling that? That is our first question that we're going to be covering today. Okay. That we got from someone on Instagram, which we both loved.
Yes. Do you want to answer first? Do you want me to answer first? How do you want to do this?
I can go first.
Okay. So,
thank goodness my partner does not really experience a ton of anxiety. Yeah. So, woo, big win for Margot on that one. Because I can't even imagine like both of us running around like headless chickens. Like I feel like I am sometimes. And so thankfully he is very much my anchor, keeps me, down to earth, or brings me back down to earth when I am just a floating orb. And so strangely though, when he does have pockets of anxiety, when something does come up, I do feel like I'm uniquely calm in those moments. You feel calmer usually, not always, right? Because sometimes the behavior, we know that anxiety can just show up in the behaviors first. And if somebody doesn't have a lot of experience with anxiety, they're not labeling what's going on as anxiety. You and I are used to being like, we're experiencing anxiety right now, and that's why I'm being a total bitch, or that's why I'm freaking out, or that's why whatever. And so for me, I feel like a lot of times when Adam is going through something, I either notice that the behavior is not typical for him, right? So sometimes it makes me ask a couple of questions, like, not, are you experiencing anxiety? But like, I try to just kind of clarify what might be going on with him in a moment. Or if the anxiety is obvious, right? And it's just like, a lot of fast talking, or, argumentative behavior, which again is very atypical for him. And so like when I notice things that are very atypical for him come up, in my head, I feel like, okay, what would I need if I were in that situation? And so I try to go with whatever I feel like I would need, which is a calm and steady presence, which is someone that can hopefully help my partner to co-regulate with my calm and steady presence. And then I try to just like let him know, right, that I'm here to just kind of like listen, and what do you need from me, kind of, or what do you think would support you most, kind of front. Yeah. And then that usually is all that needs to happen before we can kind of turn the corner and start to bring it back down. But like generally speaking, I do feel like once in a while my crazy will meet his crazy, right? Because if I don't know right away that it's anxiety, my anxiety will spike. Yeah. I might even say something like I shouldn't have, or I shouldn't, like in the moment, like in the heat. But then once I start to come down and he starts to come down, it's like, okay, like let's reflect on this moment. I think that was probably just a little blip of like worry or stress or anxiety or frustration or whatever, and like labeling it, and then figuring out like, hey, how can I support? What do you need? Right. And trying to be more of his anchor in that moment. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my spiel with that one. What about you?
Yeah. It's so funny because the way I heard that question, in my mind, I was like, yeah, Dan rarely has anxiety. Right. And so I heard it like in the sense of like, since I'm the partner with anxiety, what are the things I need? Right. Like, yeah. Cause I think with Dan, sometimes he just needs to speak it out. And then he's kind of worked out the thing, whatever the thing is. Right. Yeah. But for me, like sometimes like when I'm feeling anxious or anxiety, like something that really helps is just reflecting what someone sees. Like, hey, it looks like you're feeling anxious, or hey, it looks like you're feeling overwhelmed. Right. And sometimes that's something that really helps me. Like I love name it to tame it, because sometimes I am feeling anxious and I have no idea I'm feeling anxious. So like that reflection back. Right. Or if I am feeling anxious or overwhelmed, and sometimes it's like my brain feels like I have 800 things to do, right? When my partner just says like, hey, is there something I can help you with? Right. That helps alleviate some of the overwhelm and the stress and the anxiety for me, is just like, oh, first of all, duh, I could have asked for help, but I sometimes forget to ask for help. And so someone offering to help take one of my things off my to-do list is really helpful, right? Even if it's just like, hey, can you just take out the garbage? Because that's one of the crazy things circulating in my brain at this point, right?
Right.
Another thing that really helps me as the partner with anxiety is just asking what I need. Cause sometimes like, the reflecting, hey, you seem anxious or whatever, or like, hey, you told me you're anxious. What do you need? Cause sometimes I forget to ask myself that.
Yeah.
Right. And then when I'm like, oh, I just need a break. Oh, I need to do whatever. That's really helpful for me. It's just being asked, what do you need right now? Right. But then the other thing that just really, really helps me with anxiety, like from my partner, is reassuring me that I'm not being judged. Because a lot of times when I'm feeling anxiety, there's also like this shame around feeling anxious because I should know better, or I should have better tools, or, and so when I am feeling anxious, just companioning the moment, like, hey, like, I'm on your side. Right. I'm not judging you for feeling anxious. I'm not judging you for making a big deal out of this. Like, I'm on your side. And that's something that really, really helps me. If I'm not able to think about what I need, or if I'm not able to think about something to like, tell someone else to do, it's just like, okay, this person's on my side. And when I'm ready to take the next step in my anxiety, that's what I'll do.
Yeah. Yeah. So like thinking about it in that frame, like in that frame, right? Cause that's in my head, the way it read was like, oh, not how I'm supporting. I thought it was more of like a flip flop that this question sounded to me. That's so interesting.
Yeah. I
so
love
if you think
that we
about
heard it different.
Yeah. Again, just more surprises. Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with everything you shared about how I feel best supported by my partner when I'm experiencing anxiety. I also, and again, this is very personal to me, I also like that my partner knows me well enough that he knows typically the type of humor I might need in a moment too. Because a lot of times when I'm experiencing anxiety, I feel like the feelings are not joyful, right? Like the feelings are heavy, they're weighty, they're uncomfortable, and it's causing uncomfortable behaviors or, thoughts, even if it's just inward but they become visible, right? I don't hide my feelings too well on the outside or on the inside. And so Adam just has a really good way. And I think what supports me is he knows what kind of humor or no humor I need. Right. And if he doesn't know, he usually asks. He's like, do you think that you'd enjoy like laughing at something stupid on TV? Or do you think you'd enjoy like, this? And so give me a couple of options, like multiple choice. And I'm like, or it's like, and I'll say, because he's asked that question, I don't want humor right now. Right. And just usually that kind of thing flip flops. Cause I think for him too, that's like one of his defenses. It's just like, let's make Margot happy and smile and laugh. Right. And like, I get that from a human perspective. It's like, I'm uncomfortable. How can I make this situation lighter and less uncomfortable for both of us? Right. But because he asks, do you need humor or not? It's a nice jumping off point for me to be like, actually, I don't need humor. I don't want humor. Here's what I do need. And so similar to like what you said, it's like, he maybe asked the question of just like, how can I support or whatever, but you're just like, yeah, this is what I could use. Right. Yeah. But you didn't ask yourself. Maybe it just helps that somebody else asks, what it is that you need, and just being seen and heard, right. Yeah. Just feeling witnessed. Yeah. When you're having an episode or an experience, even if it's really mild or even if it's huge, right? Like just being seen and heard, that is the biggest thing I think that every anxiety warrior, even if you're a mini warrior or you're a major warrior like us, could use, is just being witnessed. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Question 2.
I'm anxious again.
I know, right? And now I'm like, oh God, am I going to mess up what the meaning of the question is?
Wait, I don't think you messed up. I like how we heard it differently.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay.
Otherwise, we're going to say the same shit. And then it's just going to be like, what's the point of us both answering? So
very good point. Okay. How has anxiety changed for you over the years?
Ooh, okay.
I know someone's kind of more of a broad question.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely has changed for me over the years, right? Like, I guess I'm going first. I just kind of jumped the gun there.
Please do.
So for me, some things that used to make me really anxious don't make me anxious anymore, right? And now I have new anxieties over new things that I never thought about being anxious about before. So like, you know, in my 20s and even some of my 30s, like social anxiety was really big. It was a really big problem, right? It was it took a lot for me to go to an environment with a bunch of people, especially if I didn't know them, and interact with them in a social way, especially if it's like large groups and stuff, right? Public speaking in my 20s was a huge anxiety for me. Like, and that kind of goes into social anxiety because even if I'm the one speaking in the group, right, I hated the attention on me. Right. And so it made me feel extremely uncomfortable. I had a lot of anxiety of speaking up, you know, to previous partners, to bosses, to friends, right? Like I would overthink everything and second guess myself rather than speaking up. And I used to like overanalyze everything I did in my teens, in my 20s, and a little bit of my 30s. I overanalyzed everything. My interaction, the things I did, how I could have done it better, those cringe, embarrassing moments. And I can't believe that actually like happened, right? I'm so embarrassed, mortified. And then everyone else's behavior. Why would they say that? Why would they do that? And like over analyzing to the point of like exhaustion. And I don't really do any of that anymore. Right. Yeah. So those anxieties have really changed. I'm more comfortable with public speaking. I've gained a lot of tools that have helped me with that, including like improv and mindfulness and just like understanding my subject matter. Right. You know, I don't ruminate so much about previous things. And if I notice rumination, I notice like, what am I trying to actually learn from this rather than replaying the moment over and over again so I can take it and apply it to a next situation. Right. And so that's like how my anxiety's changed in that sense of some of the things that I was super anxious about, I'm less anxious about. Like even like sweating so much and then wanting no one to know that I'm sweating. Like now I'm like, well, I sweat. Like, you know, that's who I am. Yeah. There's like a lot more acceptance in those things. But now there's like the anxiety of like, you know, overthinking everything with my dogs and keeping my dog safe, overthinking everything, you know, with my husband and hoping that he's safe, and like the fear of like losing people or, you know, right now there's pandemic anxiety and mask anxiety. And so there's a lot more of those, like more existential anxiety and less like day-to-day interacting with other people anxiety. So that's how I'd say it's changed over the years for me. How about you?
I think if I had to summarize mine, it would just be less insecurity and more acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you summarized mine. Thank you.
Yeah. Cause I related really hard to almost everything you said.
Yeah.
Like seriously, all down to the sweating, right? Like it's just, I think it's just, and some of it maybe just comes with age and experience, right? It comes with being a human for 40 years and having the curiosity and the wherewithal to pay attention to the patterns of my life, right? And the willingness to look at it through the bird's eye view and see it, but more objectively, and ask people about it and to seek the support, you know, over the years and all of that. And so I think that, you know, how it's changed is that not dissimilarly to you, like I used to freak out about so much, just we don't have time to cover all the things that I have anxiety about. And so, but I think the summation is just that ultimately I accept, I accept, you know, I'm less insecure about you name it. And I'm more accepting of
poor self-regulation. I mean, that's my example, but like poor self-regulation used to be totally embarrassing and mortifying. And I was like, okay, like I'm working on it. It's part of me though. I still get enraged. Right. So that's like, right. It's like,
and the willingness to be like when, again, just cause it was one of the last things you said. And so of course it's living on my mind. It's just like, well, I'm sweaty because I sweat. Right. And it's just like, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Right. It's like having all the fears and the insecurities that I had about literally everything, every facet of life. Feeling like I wasn't good enough, feeling like I couldn't do things, that I was incapable, worrying that I wasn't showing up in as my best self. Like, I mean, again, there's no time to cover all the things. It's everything. But I feel like how it's changed is that, I mean, yeah, some of the day-to-days are, I'm like, oh, that's new, or that's interesting, or I didn't used to, like you said, I didn't used to forget about that. And now, okay, it's on my mind. I wonder where that came from. Right. But just the level of acceptance and the ways that I can feel like I can reach it faster.
Yeah.
That's changed. I've been able to accept and still love and be compassionate with myself in ways that I didn't previously think possible.
Yeah.
And so less insecurity and more acceptance.
Love it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Some of your favorite tools or coping strategies for dealing with your anxiety.
Ooh. Do you want to do like back and forth? Like you say one and I say one and you say one.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea. Like rapid fire.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about it a million times, but
right.
Extended exhales and somatic holds. Like, why don't we have a shirt that says this? We need something new in our threadless shop. It's got to just be like something related to these two things. Because boom, number one. And for me, what that translates to is get back into your damn body model.
Yes. Yep.
Right. It's somatic holds, right? And if you're not familiar, it's like putting some firm or gentle, but loving pressure on various parts of your body. Typically, the ones that work well for me are over my heart, over my belly, one over my heart, or one hand, over my heart, and the other hand over my belly. Sometimes it's pressure on my forehead, right? And so like, sometimes it's a self hug, right? Like these types of holds for at minimum 5 to 7 breaths at minimum. And then just offering myself the ability to tap into my breathing. And usually that will include a longer exhale because it just makes me feel calmer. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, those are what those two things are. If anyone's just like, what are you talking about? This is my first episode. We've talked about it so many times. So yeah, that's number one.
Yeah. Those are my top two. Somatic holds. I'm mostly a hand on heart, right? I feel like there's multiple ways I can use it. I can use it while sitting, while walking, while doing anything, but also I can anchor into my heartbeat, or I can anchor into the breath, or I can anchor into the pressure. So I am super into that. Extended exhales, I take everywhere I go. You drive in, you're stressed out, you do an extended exhale. Like that is my baby. I love that one. Then there's like, what kind of anxiety is it, right? Do I need to move? Do I need a nap? Right? Because depending on the anxious moment and the experience of the anxiety, one of those might meet the moment. Or maybe I should say that one of my coping tools is name it to tame it, so I can figure out what the next step is, right?
Yes.
Like name the anxiety, and then is it like mixed with overwhelm? Is it mixed with exhaustion? Is it mixed with rage? Right. And then from having a clear understanding of how I'm feeling, then I can figure out like, okay, do I need to move? Do I need to nap? Do I need to like talk it out with myself?
Yes.
Or someone? Right. So I feel like the name it to tame it kind of helps with like the next coping strategy.
100. Yeah. Another one for me is brain dumping.
Yes.
It's with permission. Right. Yeah. And maybe if I'm doing it myself, and I kind of got this from Jonna, like Jonna's one of our former guests, brain dumping into a voice note for yourself to like hear back what you're dealing with. Journaling, right? Yes. Same thing, getting all of my shit out into the journal, writing it down, typing it up, whatever it's going to be. Or with permission, like, I'll unload on you or my mom or Adam or any other number of people that I feel like, depending on the situation, could be a good ear. Right. Yeah. And also the kind of person that's going to say like, hey, are you looking for feedback or not? Right. And so making sure I'm choosing the right person I'm brain dumping on, getting their permission first. And then doing that or brain dumping for myself in a journal or a voice note.
I love that. And I use that too. When I first like started to try to befriend myself, right? Like, I don't know, 15 years ago now, when I was like, oh, wait, I can do something other than self-hate. Right.
Yes.
I used to sit in front of a mirror with my breakfast and have conversations with myself. And I would literally like brain dump to myself, but it helped me with a lot of clarity of like what my mind was working on. And then like I could befriend myself and help myself like, okay, well, maybe we should focus on this today. Right.
Yeah.
And so I love the brain dumping. Now it's more like with friends, with Dan, or journaling. I think the last one that I would say for me as a coping, tool or style or whatever is if I'm in a group of people and I don't know them really well, again, it's like name it to team it, but I just call it out. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Right. Like if I'm like with improv people or, I'm just kind of really honest about me and my feelings. And then they can, I'm not telling them why, or I'm not asking for help. But sometimes if I just call it out, like I'm feeling nervous right now, that helps me enough to at least move through like, okay, other people know where I'm at. We're good. We can keep moving on.
Right. Just like sharing it outwardly, being really honest and communicating that to people whose your energy is going to affect. Right. Like if you're sharing a space with people, that means your energy is going to affect them. And if you have anxious energy, it's going to affect them. And so it's like a helpful tool to let them know what they're dealing with and what they're in for or whatever. And at the same time, like similar to the name entertainment, you're able to sort of be like, I'm owning this shit so I can move through it. Right.
This is where I'm at.
Love it.
Maybe it'll shift, but this is where I'm at right now. And that helps me with coping with where I'm at. It's like, okay, everyone else, like, it can't be surprised by my behavior now. Right. Like
you should know me well enough. These strangers, they don't know me, but totally. I think my last one is also another grounding strategy, similar to, the first one, somaticals and extended exhales, and that's tapping and brushing. And so what I mean by that is using the tips of my fingers or my whole palm to tap various parts of my body, typically around my temple area, around my, throat and neck. And I'll use my whole fist sometimes for like the meat above my shoulders, reaching across my body to kind of pound on that spot, which holds a lot of tension in my body. And so it's just another way for me to remember I have a body and reconnect with it. And then brushing is a little bit more of, it's a little bit less jarring for me. Sometimes I need to be jarred and like, jolted a little bit. And the tapping helps me with like waking up. Or reorienting at a faster pace. Brushing feels relaxing, and it's just using my whole palm and gently stroking down my arms, my legs, my belly, my back, my hips, my chest, right? And if there's a certain part of my body that's feeling tight or clenched or holding or uncomfortable, I maybe work a little bit harder on that spot. And I like to kind of the visual of like, what color am I painting myself right now? And what kind of brush am I using? And so it's like a visual with a grounding exercise. So
I love that.
That's it.
Yeah.
Those are some of our strategies. Maybe they resonate with you, or maybe you try them out. Okay. Next question.
Oh boy, anxious again.
Every time. Okay. What is the most helpful reframe about anxiety that has improved or helped your recovery?
Ooh. All right. Are you taking this one first? Am I going first? What's happening?
I'll go first. Did I go? Okay. Well, we kind of spitballed back and forth for the last one. I'm like, what did we do the last one? Okay. I'll go first. For me, the biggest reframe is just that anxiety is my teacher. She's going to be here all the time. I can look at her as a friend, and I do, or frenemy, right? And so I like the word teacher instead, because she can be my friend, my frenemy. And again, I always genderize her because to me, it's a she. She's Bertha. She's with me. So if that feels weird for you warriors, I'm sorry, not sorry. But, Bertha is my teacher. She reminds me that I'm human, that I'm flawed. She also reminds me that I'm strong and that I've felt her before and I can move through it and get on with my day and my life.
Yeah.
And so, and I like the reframe of like, I have something to learn from this feeling of anxiety. I have something to learn from this experience, however sticky or uncomfortable I might be right now. I have something to learn from it. And I also have some of those tools like we talked about and many more, right? We don't have time for all the tools, but that help reactivate my brain into a more positive and hopeful place.
Yeah.
Right? And when I'm in a more positive and hopeful place, I'm able to do more things.
Yeah. Right.
Feel
Because when you have
better,
something to learn, you can be more curious and then you're more open.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. For me, when I think about this, I don't know if it's necessarily a reframe, but it is a reframe in my relationship to anxiety. For so much of my life, I like, honestly, if anyone ever speaks to my friend Claudia, like the theme that I always said was like, what's wrong with me? Like I always said that to her and she was like, nothing's wrong with you, but I just felt like something was wrong. Right. And so understanding that anxiety is not me, right? There's nothing wrong with me. Anxiety is a physiological response to the world that we live in. And that it can show up in many ways. And sure, there's like nature versus nurture and whatever. But for me, in improving my relationship, is understanding that anxiety can show up as fight, wanting to fight something, as flight, wanting to run away, as people pleasing, right? That's a fawn response, as perfectionism, because if I'm perfect, then there's no threat. I'll be like rejected and abandoned, right? Or even like disassociation, the faint, right? So for me, the understanding that at least some of my anxiety is normal and natural and part of being human and is a physiological response, right? That these modes were put in place to keep me safe or help me feel safe. And sometimes the reaction is outdated, right? Sometimes I react to something like it's a saber-toothed tiger when it's not, right? But for me, seeing it through that lens has really helped me have a more compassionate relationship with myself and my anxiety. And again, like with what you said, be more curious.
Yeah. It's so good. Yeah. I knew you were going to, I had a feeling you were going to say that because it's come up so many times. No, just about the, the what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right. Just knowing that that's bullshit. Right. Exactly.
I mean, it's a game changer. Like the thing is, like, people can hear these words, right? And they can be like, oh yeah, I relate. But like the moment you realize there's nothing wrong with you, like it shifts your life.
Totally.
Right. It's not you.
Exactly.
Other things.
It's not you. It's something you're dealing with, something you're experiencing. Yeah, exactly. All right. Next question.
Okay.
This episode is going to be titled Anxiety Again. 100th episode special.
I got butterflies in my tummy.
I'm going to write it down right now. Anxiety again. Okay. How would you describe a panic attack versus an anxiety attack?
See, this one's tricky. This one is for me, this one's a really challenging one. And I did know the questions we were having ahead of time, and I didn't really think about any of them except this one. Because I was like, I don't really know, right? Like I had to really sit with it and think about the times, because I haven't had many panic attacks, right? Yeah. So I had to think about what made them different. And so the first thing that I'll say is that I pretty much see them very similar. The sensations in my body, the helplessness, the discomfort that it feels like. But when I really think about it, I feel like that when a panic attack shows up, I have less of an understanding of where it's come from. And it might be coming up from like previous trauma that's like unresolved, and I haven't really like thought about it or dealt with it or something like that, as opposed to an anxiety attack, which is like a buildup from the day to day. And that's like the best way I can think about it for me, right? And I think I have had very few panic attacks, and I've had more anxiety attacks. Yeah.
No, I hear you. I hear that.
What about you? This one was hard for me.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar. For me, a panic attack feels fast. It feels like it's sprung from nothing almost.
Yeah.
Right. Like I couldn't, if you told me maybe in the deep rear view, like a long time later, I might be able to sit with it and reflect on what might have been happening around that situation that induced this sharp, fast reaction. Right. And so like, to me, a panic attack is when I feel like I'm going to faint. That's usually the one difference for me between a panic attack and an anxiety attack. is that it feels so intense. The intensity level and the speed with which it arrives feels way more extreme. Let's just go with that. It feels way more extreme. I feel faint, like I can't breathe, like my chest has 1,000 pounds on it. It feels sudden and out of nowhere, and I have a much harder time understanding it. Meaning like it's, its origins, right? Like whatever. I've only had a handful of those in my life.
They're very scary. Like
they are very scary. Yeah. It is terrifying. Or again, for me, it is terrifying. Anxiety attacks, like kind of like what you said, they feel more gradual. It feels like I often on the podcast and obviously in conversations with you, like I've said how often anxiety feels buzzy for me. It feels like a ready to boil pot, right? Like I'm waiting for the water to bubble over the surface and spill everywhere, right? And that's the anxiety attack when I can't contain the boiling water anymore. And so it's the hum, it's the buzz, and you kind of said of day to day, and that's similar to me. It's like this shit in this one scenario or whatever has been building up for days or hours or weeks even of time until I can't contain the water anymore and it blows up. Right. And so like where it's similar is some of the physiological responses that I experience, right? The heaviness in my chest, the deep shortness of breath that I experience, the fact that I feel like I'm going to pass out, even if I don't. It's immediate sweats, but I'm also shaking, right? I'm sweating, but I'm cold, right? So a lot of the physical responses feel the same. Speaking of why it's so terrifying, right? For me, the physical responses wind up feeling the same. But what's different is my understanding of how I got there.
Right.
With an anxiety attack, I feel like I have a better understanding of how and why, right? I can come up with in the rear view, how and why. And I can access my tools a little bit faster in an anxiety attack. If I'm experiencing panic, I feel like I'm dying. It feels like I'm dying. And so like, I know that sounds super dark, but that is the major difference. Is most of the physiological responses are the same.
Right.
But those are some of the subtle differences. Right. So that is, like, again, this is my experience, right? Of anxiety versus panic. This is how I understand them to be for me.
Right. So, same. That's the thing. I feel like for anxiety attacks, like I'm able to at least name it and get some taming of it once I figure out like, oh, this is because of this that I've been ignoring for X amount of time. But for panic, it's like, I can name, panic, but like, that's it. It's like, where the fuck's this coming from? Like, why am I experiencing, it's like, it's way more intense.
Which makes it inevitably winds up making it scarier because it's like, there's no rhyme or reason sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Last question for this mailbag. I know we can only cover 6 questions because we have so many and it would take forever.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. How has your relationship to anxiety changed since you started the practice of yoga? And I wanted to save this one as our last question because I do feel like yoga and mindfulness is a big part of, obviously it's part of our work. It's part of our daily lives.
Yeah. It's how we met.
It's how we met. It's why we started this podcast in some ways. Right. And the practice has informed a lot of how we take care of ourselves through our anxiety.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I thought it'd be a good place to wrap this episode up in a bow for our 100th special.
Woohoo.
So am I going first?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so for me, it's changed my relationship to my anxiety in every single way. Every single way, because I only found the practice because of that panic attack that I had. Right.
Yeah.
And I told the story back in our first episode and it's come up a few times randomly since, but at 18, I was sitting in a final exam and I had a full blown panic attack during this final exam. And the reason why I know is panic and not anxiety is because it did come out of nowhere. It wasn't like I had been worrying about the test for weeks or I'd been studying my ass off. It was literally sprung from nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, again, in serious rear view, it's like, all right, maybe I could really dive deep and figure out a dozen reasons. Maybe not. To me, it felt more like sheer panic than it did anything else. even this many years later, I still feel like I truly don't know where
Yeah.
it came from. But experienced this panic attack nonetheless. And I had zero tools and strategies. And so I was just freaking out. And thankfully, the kind stranger next to me helped me out in that moment. I won't retell the whole exact story, but he suggested I try yoga because it's what helped him. And so I took yoga at college the next semester. And while it wasn't a practice at that time, it wasn't translated into something that was a life skill or could provide skills outside of my yoga mat and this room filled with other people my age, taking PE class, a PE course for college. It did help and serve and support. It felt amazing in my body. I felt more connected to my body than I ever had before, even after spending the prior 2 decades dancing, which had been my previous way, and still, is the way that I connect most with my body in some way, on some days. But at the end of the day, yoga provides something that dance never could, which is the introspection. It's the paying attention to myself. It's the trying not to look pretty or, have things flow and have beautiful lines to them and be thinking about how things look. And it was the first time where I was given the opportunity to think about how things felt. And so to sum it up, it's just, it literally was the kicking off point to me, learning that, putting the word to my experience of anxiety, right? Yeah. To learning that it's not, doesn't make me a crazy person, that I've actually been experiencing in my whole life prior to that 18 years, to that 18-year-old self. And so, yeah, I think that how has my relationship to it changed? It hasn't really, because pretty much since day one, it's felt like just a lifesaver. And even though my practice is different every day of the week, and sometimes it's non-existent, right? Let's just be real. At least not in the way that I would hope I had the time for always, but I'm always finding something from the practice that supports me still. And so to me, it's not enough of a change for me to say like, it's changed, yes, I've developed other tools and I've let it go sometimes. And I pick up other things that feel better in one moment versus another. And it's not like a cure all for everything. Yeah. But for me personally, my relationship to it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So, when talking about yoga, I get very mixed because the practice did, when I first was introduced to yoga, it changed my life and it led me to who I am now. And at the same time, there was a lot of harm that's happened in the yoga world and with people I've worked with and with the instructors I've worked, and so I always feel like I tend to shy away from identifying as like a yogi and really talking about yoga, right? But I say that because when I just heard you speak and when I really thought about the question, like yoga is the thing that really opened up my world. It really opened it up. Like I was in therapy. I was diagnosed with anxiety. And my therapist was like, you should try this MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction course. And in the MBSR 8-week course, there was yoga. And it was weird and it was wonky and it was a new way of being in my body. But there was something magical about it that I was like, I am curious enough to go into an extreme, like discomfort zone, and go to a class and try this out. Right. And so for me to like go to a yoga class back in the day in my early 20s is like unheard of. Right. Because I was so insecure of how I came off and being judged and doing it wrong and being a beginner and not being perfect right away, And so for me, yoga just really opened up a new way of being with myself, a new way of relating to my body and understanding my body. Like, I just remember these like experiences that, of course, like they're so personal, they're hard to really explain. But like one time I was in, Baddha Konasana, which is just you're sitting with your feet together. And I'm looking at my feet and I just had this like deep appreciation for everything my feet do. Right. And so, but there's so many moments like that. And so yoga really for me was the starting point of changing my relationship with my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which then having more of an embodiment, having more of a connection to my body, then changed my relationship with anxiety. Because without being connected to my body, I would never know if I was feeling anxiety or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's really, now I just feel like I have to say this because, like I just said, I sometimes get uncomfortable with yoga. There's so many other parts to it. Like there's the yamas and the niyamas where I was like, oh, wait, part of yoga is practicing being a good person to yourself and to others. Right. Or there is the meditation practice. There is the breath practice. But all of that just really led to me being more open to trying out new things and being open to more things and more experiences. And so I feel like that was really the gateway. And that really just changed. It was like the beginning of how it changed my relationship to my body, which then rippled out to myself.
Yeah. So beautiful. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So I think that this was a perfect question to cap out this episode.
I didn't know I was going to be so touched by that. Like,
I know, I didn't expect it either.
Yeah.
I did not expect it either, truly. And then just like was, sharing how I felt about it and hearing you share it. It's like our practice can ebb and flow. It can change our relation, and we can acknowledge, right, the deep, sometimes westernized nature of, of yoga in this country and plenty of other countries. I mean, it's very layered. And so I don't disagree with you that like sometimes the association with the practice can feel kind of weird or sticky or uncomfortable. And so, but while still acknowledging how much it's shaped us throughout, at least the last 20 years of our lives. So, I didn't expect to feel the way I do now either. Like I thought this was going to be a nice like lob for us both at the end, and it winds up, and it doesn't feel heavy, but it just feels more emotional than I thought.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I guess it just speaks to like, at the end of the day, it's a big part of the reason why we're podcasting about anxiety, right? Totally. It is. And it's informed a lot of the ways that we support ourselves, as you said. Okay. So warriors, 100 episodes in.
Woohoo! We did it.
Believe it. We did it. We've had our special. We look forward to doing more mailbag episodes in the future. So Abby, we have a shared win.
A Mabby
win of the week.
Win of the week.
What is our shared Mabby win this week, girl?
People want to be on our podcast.
Right?
Strangers, not our friends.
Not our family.
And it doesn't feel like stranger danger. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
We weren't even, we put out a call at some point for guests. But then all of a sudden, like weeks later, all these people reached out to us and they wanted to be guests on our podcast. And so we are organizing loads of people, handfuls of people. And that feels like a huge win.
It does. Yeah, because it felt like for a hot minute there, you and I had let go of our wanting to have a guest every other week, and we need to be consistent with that one thing. And again, with that former perfectionist mindset, which we really didn't have too much with this show, but we were kind of sticking to the formula for a long time. But at the end of last year, at the end of our last season, we kind of let it go. We let it all go. We're like, let's just talk to the guests we want to talk to, whose stories and energies speak to us, who we think will empower our listeners, and have fun with us and inspire us and our listeners. And so since we all let it go a little while ago, we were kind of just like, okay, let's put it out there, see who wants to come on with like very little expectations this go around. And so it's been fun and interesting, wild to have so many inquiries over the past couple of weeks alone, which is so cool. And as you said, they're total strangers, but not in a bad way. But
not in the bad way. So I'm super, exactly. Psyched to connect with them, meet them. Right.
And grow our warriors.
Right. And we've met them in so many different ways. Someone found us through YouTube. People find us through Instagram. People have found us on Facebook. So it's just really exciting to see like how what we're offering like ripples out and people find us in different ways.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that we didn't know 100 episodes ago how this was going to go, literally at all. But, I think that I'm pretty happy with its trajectory so far.
Yeah.
And it's led us to being able to talk to so many kick-ass warriors and keep adding people to our family. And I'm super, super grateful.
Yeah.
So warriors, if you'd like to connect with us for any reason, you can join us over on Instagram. We're at Anxiety Warriors Podcast, or you can feel free to shoot us an email at anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com to shout out your wins of the week, share topic ideas with us, or if you think you'd be a great fit as a guest on our show, let's get you on the calendar. Let's help you tell your anxiety journey. No story too big or too small for us. We love them all equally. Please take 2 seconds and smash that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're tuning in right now. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have all of our episodes uploaded for you all over there. And then hop on into our show notes and click our Threadless merch shop link. You can get some amazing Anxiety Warriors podcast stuff on everything from t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, journals, yoga mats, you name it. You can get something with our logos on it. To help support the work that we're doing and hopefully can keep doing, because it brings us so much joy.
Yes. Thank you all so much for going on this journey with us. We are so grateful that we get to do this with you 100 times.
Woo! So the next 100. Till next time.